Good evening. I'd like to call this evening's Kings Local Schools Board of Education work session, and regular board meeting for June of 2023 to order. Mr. Morrow, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Phillips,
Here.
Ms. Groff, Ms. Cowan,
Here.
Mr. Skirl,
Here.
Mr. Beltran.
Here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
May I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion. Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Skirl,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Beltran.
Yes. First on tonight's agenda are reports and presentations. Mr. Sears.
Yes, thank you, President Beltran and King's Board of Education. Tonight, we want to provide an update on the strategic initiatives that were set forth earlier this year and update some progress on those. If you recall, in the fall, we presented information on an organizational structure of implementing 3 strategic initiatives in our district that were aligned, that were coherent, and they were unified across the entire school district. So throughout the course of this year, we have been working through the strategic initiatives that I will outline and remind the board of, but also provide evidence for some of the forward movement that we've been able to accomplish. So when we've been looking from a cultural standpoint and how we want to move our district forward through growth, we've been following through the King Strong philosophy. This philosophy really is focused on establishing a culture of growth within all of our adults and students in our district. It's an opportunity for us to analyze current practices, current approaches, and seek opportunities to better ourselves and better others. Our second focus on our philosophy was to empower teacher voice. So that's work that's been done this year to have teachers have a seat at the table and a significant influence on work that's done throughout the district. They're experts in their field and feel like they need to be at the table as we continue to move the district forward. And then the third was looking at innovation for the future. So how do we take the things that we're doing in Kings, the things that we're doing well, and then work towards innovation? All of this fits in our King Strong philosophy. And it's been a heavy emphasis this year with working on growth, whether that's leadership growth, teacher growth, student growth, having our staff have a seat at the table and be empowered to lead throughout the district, and then looking for innovation. So our strategic initiatives for 22-23 were designed for the purpose of aligning arrows throughout our district. There's opportunity for us with 7 schools to have a common systematic approach throughout the district, that we move all buildings and central office moving in the same direction around 3 key components. So we wanted to create alignment. So the rationale for strategic initiatives: focused, aligned, impacting all buildings. Number 2 was focused long-term initiatives. So these are not one-year opportunities. This isn't going to change for next year, but then we will build on the things that were established this year. So long-term, 3 to 5 year commitments. This creates sustainability. It creates an opportunity for us to continue to evaluate growth over time. That if we want to get really good at some things, we need to commit to it over a long period of time. And it allows us to resist the urge to put too many things in front of our staff at one time, so that oftentimes it can become overwhelming. So focusing on a few things and doing them really well is helpful. I've talked about the third place was empowered leadership and teacher voice. And then throughout this process, our buildings have created their strategy and action plans. And we met with the building administrators at least twice this year to evaluate and update how we've been operating within each strategic initiative. So let's dive in a little bit about the philosophy that we have and also the structure. Diving into the next piece is our first strategic initiative was around our culture blueprint. I'll remind the board it was to create a common understanding of the culture blueprint by aligning and modeling language and behaviors to promote King's culture. So this was an implementation strategic initiative for us, which is why I have the word implement there. So as a district, the culture blueprint had been in action, had been created and developed and presented through our district, for the last few years. We were at a point this year where we needed to put that in action. So our strategic initiative was around that idea of creating a common understanding, common language, putting that out in all buildings and in our community around what we mean by our King's culture. If you look at the next slide, our culture blueprint aligned to the beliefs on the left side, the middle column are the 9 behaviors, and the far right side are the outcomes that we seek to produce. It's really important to note that as we've worked through this strategic initiative this year, we've immersed our staff, all staff, into this document. We've immersed them into understanding the beliefs, the behaviors, and the outcomes. And we've challenged them, and they're challenging us to follow through with the behaviors that are present in those 9 spaces. Some of the things like saying yes to hard things, building new skills, respecting tradition, focusing on the future, embracing differences. These are behaviors that we want and are working towards being very prevalent throughout our entire school district. This was an implementation goal for the purpose of if the full thought is that if you get your culture right and you have staff in an entire district moving in the same direction, that's willing to take risks, that's willing to support each other, that are willing to try new things, that it's going to allow for greater opportunities later on when we do things that are going to directly impact students. So the emphasis for us was we are going to really dive in and focusing on our culture, the culture of growth. Everything in this document speaks to growth. And so evaluating all aspects of the organization around growth. And then from there, we continue to massage this a little bit so we can continue to get better in these areas so that when presented with hard things, we're equipped to handle that. And so this is a big philosophy, a lot of work that has gone on prior to even my arrival here. We're just kind of accelerating the implementation of this. Okay, so that was strategic initiative 1. Strategic initiative 2 was our Power 5 future skills. So our goal statement here was simply to communicate. This is a communication goal. This was work to remind the board that was about a year and a half worth of work engaging our community, all of our staff and even students into the Power 5. We call these our Power 5 because these are not soft skills in our world. These are very impactful, important tools and skills that our students need to be successful beyond the walls of our school district. And so our goal this year was to simply communicate the outcome of what had been worked on for a year and a half prior. So our Power 5 future skills of critical thinking, collaboration, communication, problem solving, and career readiness. We have communicated that to every staff member. We've utilized PD time for this work. They've seen the outcome. We've placed this throughout the Night Nation News at various times, and we've also put this into our quality profile so that our entire community is at least familiar with the language of Power 5 future skills. Where we go from here, moving forward, is we will be working. This was a communication goal, and as I'll outline in a few minutes, next year it will become more of an implementation goal, that we will work to implement the Power 5 into the daily classroom activities. And so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The next slide is our Power 5. You've seen this visual. It is in the quality profile that all of our community members have. And it contains the major functions plus some descriptors under each one. This is work that we would expect over time that our students to be able to master so that they can be extremely competitive and highly successful when compared to their peers, no matter what direction they go, whether they go directly into employment after high school, whether they're enlisted into any one of our military branches, or whether they enroll into a 2-year or 4-year college. So no matter their pathway, if through the course of the educational experience at King's, they are mastering these components, the students are going to be extremely prepared and highly successful for the next phase. To fully implement this work will be an opportunity for our staff working alongside our instructional coaches for redesigning lessons, redesigning experiences to put kids in positions to develop the skills and the attributes listed in the Power Five. I remind you, we call it the Power Five, not the soft skills, or oftentimes you hear that. They're important, and we feel like their importance is significant because, as we've stated many times, content acquisition through technology advances and other avenues of innovation, we're going to see content become more accessible to students. How we acquire content is going to be more accessible. How we apply the content is going to be the most impactful piece. Applying it through communication, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and career readiness is important. And so this can be disruptive in nature, and we're going to work collaboratively with our staff to look at redesigns and in how we're methodically working with students throughout our district to develop these skills and master them by the time they graduate. The last strategic initiative was personalized learning. This was a learn goal. Okay, this was just a learn goal. And to be honest with you, we pushed pause a little bit on this to really get into defining it and developing a common understanding. So we did not navigate. We met with various groups. We met with various organizations looking at who do we partner with as an organization to help Kings and help us with this. And over time, we have adopted, and we're going to be participating into the Ohio Personalized Learning Network next year. This is a partnership with districts throughout the state of Ohio and KnowledgeWorks. And they're running a sequence of launch events. We have launch teams established at every building for next year, where we have small groups of teachers and administrators that are going to dive into creating an understanding of what personalized learning even means. So the learn goal will really happen next year. And we have launch teams already established for that. And Mr. Freeman and Mrs. Martin have done great work kickstarting that and getting those teams organized so that we can really look at how we're going to personalize learning and what that means for Kings. In a sense, what this means, because there's some misperceptions of what personalized learning is, it's really future-focused instructional design, giving students voice, choice, ownership into their own learning. And how do we coach our staff and help them? We're already doing a lot of really nice things right now. It's how to enhance that work. So those were the 3 strategic initiatives. So the next slide outlines, just for the board and the community to understand, every building and our district created and followed a strategy and action plan. So I have just pulled off one piece of the district's culture blueprint, strategy and action plan. So we take our strategic initiative, which was develop a common understanding of the culture blueprint. And then the buildings are responsible for following a strategy and action plan. So they identify their strategy and action, who's responsible, what evidence they have, the resources they need, and then due dates, and then when they have accomplished each one of these. So board, you were provided information on this today. All of the strategy and action plans for the district and each building. So you can peruse that at your leisure. But you will see that in order for accountability and forward, if you go back to the beginning slide, we talked about aligning arrows. We wanted all 7 buildings moving in the right direction. This is a way that we ensure this happens. I know Mr. Spinner, Mrs. Martin, Mr. Freeman, and myself met with the building principals twice this year for a review and an update on their strategy and action plan for each one of our strategic initiatives. So they've updated those throughout the year. We monitor them, we support what they need, but you can see some alignment in applying the culture blueprint. This was just a district example that I snipped off, but each building, you have access to each buildings. The next piece is the culture blueprint summary. We focused on a culture of growth. We utilized 3 professional development days for the culture blueprint, the better parts of 3 professional development days, not only immersing them into the culture blueprint, but also doing various activities through empowering and growing teacher leadership. So as Mrs. Martin and Mr. Freeman have outlined a few times this year, we have a PD team that was established that designed learning experiences for our staff. And those PD teams went back and worked with PD team members, went back and worked with there was a culture team at every building. So every building had a culture team that they worked on, and they designed activities to support moving forward in the culture blueprint. So what you're seeing is we had the organizational structure here is that we have a group of kind of working at the central office level that has teachers and administrators a part of it. And when they break into the building, there's a team of folks at each building that work to apply that for what that building needs. Every one of our buildings has a little different identity and a little different focus, but all of them are working towards understanding some aspects of the culture blueprint. So we've engaged a significant number of staff that it's not just, we're working on creating long-term sustainability. If a principal is the only one doing it, or central office person is the only one doing it, then you lose a little bit of the sustainability. So we have incredible teachers that are working as culture teams at each building, as well as our teacher leadership academy that's been engaging in this work this year. And so we are really blessed in Kings to have an incredible staff that steps up, steps out of the boat, takes the opportunity to lead work with their peers. The next slide is I provided a summary. These are summary items of what happened. I'll just talk about 2. We dedicated a portion of each month's staff meetings to hold discussions, read articles, and connect with the culture blueprint. So that was a strategy and action that one of the buildings put together. Each month staff meeting, they talked, they read articles, they worked on how to apply it. We also asked them in an executive summary that they provided to talk about future work. What do we need? So I will look at the very top bullet there just to highlight deeper exploration into how we can immerse ourselves as a staff in all 9 behaviors. The culture team at SLE would like to see this language and values carried over at the classroom level. So SLE, their culture team, is, you can see, is identified there, but they also want to take it over into to work with students on saying yes to hard things and embracing differences and some of the behavioral components of the culture blueprint. So we pulled off from the executive summaries that each building created. We pulled off some of the highlights and some of the future work that the buildings are working on. So the culture blueprint was the one we most focused on because it was our implement goal this year. It was our implement strategic initiative we worked heavily on. We will continue to implement. So looking at the next slide, we have how do we move forward? The 23-24 strategic initiative. So I'll outline. So as we will keep the same 3, because as I said at the beginning, these are 3 to 5 year sustainability. In order to get really good at something, you have to commit to it. So steps to creation, we had an administrative analysis on what the strategic initiative should be for next year. The PD team then took that and analyzed it, made adjustments, made some changes. And then at our retreat last week, the administrators put a final seal of approval on what the strategic initiative is for next year. So for the culture blueprint, integrating the culture blueprint through effective communication and training aligned with the beliefs. So they're going to continue to integrate it throughout the district, throughout each building. The Power Five was just a communicate goal. It's more of an integrate goal and implement goal next year. Create a framework for teachers and students to effectively integrate the Power Five future skills into the curriculum, and it should say daily classroom activities. It's cut off there. And then for personalized learning, launch teams will establish and communicate a district-wide personalized learning framework and develop an implementation plan. So you could see the strategic initiatives build on each other from one year to the next based on what our needs are. So we have, to summarize these, we have a cultural mindset of growth goal. We have future forward thinking, preparing our students for the future goal. And we have future focused instructional design goal that is meant to significantly increase student achievement. So when implemented at full scale, I think we're going to see some pretty exciting things. I will stop there and take any questions from the board. I know I sent you significant information earlier today, but just keeps you up to speed on what we are working on throughout this year, and kind of what next year will begin to bring. So I'll stop and take any questions.
I have one on this last slide, Mr. Sears. So I know you're saying that we've got some slight changes. What's it going to look like from last year to this year with the changes we're seeing in these initiatives?
So the biggest change you will start to see is in our culture blueprint, because when implemented and as we work through that, our willingness to grow, our willingness to change, our willingness to accept new ideas, not only working with adults will increase, but then also working with our students. So we're creating resilience and creating opportunities for innovation, thinking about how to do school differently, thinking about what our students need, be willing to have a growth mindset during conversation. So you may not see a data-driven example of this. You might not see data to support, but what you see is the behaviors that we work at in the district. How we are operating is collaborative, it's communicative, and it's designed to analyze the best way to run Kings and have our students experience moving forward. So this is evaluating culture, and willingness to change and willingness to grow is often a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But what you'll see is you'll start to see more innovative approaches put in place because of this.
I don't have a question, but just a comment. Seeing this now, a year after we just saw the blueprint, it's really exciting to see some of this coming to fruition just whenever you're in the buildings. I think you can see a lot of that happening and going on from teachers to students especially, but also from the administrators to the students as well.
Yeah. Second that, Mrs. Phillips. I was going to say the same. Harkens back to I believe, second interview with Mr. Sears. We asked Mr. Sears to bring in some things that he would like to introduce to the district, some things he thinks would be beneficial, and this was a top of list. So to see this come into fruition, to see all the hard work that the staff has put in as well with this, it's very exciting. Yeah, I don't have any questions now. I think you've done a really good job of discussing this over the course of the year, actually the last 2 years, and us tracking the progress. So it's very exciting. All of the offshoots from the things we've seen, the things that Mrs. Martin and I'm having it. Yeah, Mr. Freeman. It's been a long day. Very exciting stuff. So yeah, I thank you for all of your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? All right. With that, we will move to public participation. Don't believe we have any participants. All right. Next on the agenda are the approval items for the treasurer, which include the minutes from the work session and regular meeting from the month of May, financial items, appropriations and amended certificate of resources, temporary appropriations, advances of funds, liability, fleet and property insurance, and the public records law. Were there any questions for Mr. Morrow concerning any of these items? Mr. Morrow, did you have anything to add, sir?
I'll just add on number 7. We were happy to see it was a 6% increase in our liability, fleet and property insurance. We spend quite a bit of money here, and we were happy to see that come in under double digits with all the natural disasters that the country's encountered the last few years. This has been a trying time for these coverages with all the payouts that have had to happen. So our consultants, the school insurance consultant group, they do a nice job in quoting us and fighting for good renewals. So we were happy to see that.
Is that 6.3 where you expected it to come in, or you were expecting double digits?
Expecting double digits. You've seen hurricanes and insurance completely leaving certain states like California and Florida. So it's a really tough market. So to come in at 6.3, we were really happy about.
Any further questions for Mr. Morrow? All right. With that, may I have a motion to approve the items for the treasurer?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Mr. Morrow?
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom.
Yes. Excuse me. Next on the agenda are the items for the superintendent. There's looks to be a couple of field trips here. Mr. Sears, did you have anything to add?
No, these are both pretty standard summer field trips, one for our football team to go to Capital University for team camp, and another one for our women's soccer team that is traveling to Wittenberg for a team camp as well. So annual events that our fall teams do.
Perfect. Questions? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items for the superintendent?
I'll make that motion.
I will second the motion, Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Next on the agenda are the consent agenda approval items for the assistant superintendent regarding HR and business. Mr. Spinner, Mr. Lucky, did you have anything to add?
Thank you, President Belfrom, King's Board of Education. Just a few items on the agenda this evening, leading off with our personnel items. First up, staff resignations and retirements. Would like to point out Jill Swanson has submitted her resignation for personnel savings plan purposes, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. New staff members, we have several new faces replacing outgoing staff. Very excited about who we are adding to our team this upcoming school year. Staff miscellaneous items, supplementals and stipends, including fall, winter, and spring sport and extracurricular supplementals, along with temporary employment. Item number 2 has to do with our personnel savings plan. This is year 2 of the PSP. This year we had two staff members who are eligible for a personnel savings plan this year. One who is taking us up on the offer. We identified one of those staff members. She will. This is Mrs. Swanson. Approximate savings to the district is $39,000. That's salary and benefits annually. It includes it up to a 5-year contract with the district. Her salary will be frozen on step 5, and she will keep her seniority. Staff members eligible through STRS at this particular time and place are anyone of any age and 34 years of service. So this is Mrs. Swanson is finishing her 34th year of service. You could also be 65 and have 5 years of service to qualify for an unreduced benefit through STRS. Some benefits to the district. I'd like to remind the board, we'll maintain a staff member's expertise and again, save approximately $39,000 annually. We were able to capture more of a savings last year. We had more members that were eligible, so our district saved over $250,000 annually, starting with last year's plan. Benefits to the employee, and Mrs. Swanson is very interested in continuing on as part of our teaching staff. She would have received a higher salary if she were not taking us up on this particular offer. She will begin collecting her unreduced STRS retirement and investment, and that is paid by STRS. That is something that she's been paying into for the life of her career. That money is coming from the state, and it's reducing our salary, thus the savings. And she'll continue teaching with the district. So we're very excited to have Mrs. Swanson back at JF Burns Elementary next school year, should the board approve personnel savings plan year 2. Approving these items tonight initiates that process. There is a process through which we have to follow per state guidelines. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
As part of the personnel savings plan and the rehire process, the board needs to have a public hearing where members of the public can come and speak any opinions on continuing with this. It happens that this year we don't have a board meeting that falls within the window of when we have to have the meeting. So we need to set that meeting. We don't need to do it right now, but I need to get a notice in the paper tomorrow if possible to keep everything moving and to make sure we hit our deadlines.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Mr. Mayor?
I do not. Thank you. Mr. Lucky has a few items.
Thank you, sir. Just one item for, so that everyone's aware. So we yearly, we go through a process where we have to look at our breakfast and lunch pricing. And this year is a year that we've had to take an increase. I think the biggest factor in this year is a 7.9% food cost increase. So we don't take this very lightly, because it does affect our families. So you'll see a minimal increase in some areas on our breakfast and lunches. We go through paid lunch equity, and yearly they require us to use a calculator that they provide to make a recommendation for what our food prices should be based on number of meals, free and reduced, and food costs. So just to give everyone a heads up on that. I would like to take the opportunity to give kudos to our food service folks. It's been a heck of a year on food shortages, price fluctuations. They're doing a fantastic job. If you saw Channel 5 yesterday, great program on our summer feeding program down in South Lebanon. They do a tremendous job down there working to get kids fed, getting kids in the door. And I do want to take an opportunity from a staffing perspective. Currently it's June. We've got 7 food service openings going into next year. So if there's any community members, parents that would love a morning, midday position, get to maybe spend some time with their kids. We've got 7 openings throughout the district that we'd love to have people have some interest in. And on the bus side, we are always looking for drivers. So thank you for entertaining that portion of it. That was a selfish plug. But any questions on the food pricing increase? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lucky. And with that, may I have a motion to approve the items?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow?
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfron.
Yes. Next on the consent agenda are the items for the assistant superintendent regarding our educational programs. That would be Mrs. Martin and Mr. Freeman.
Mhm.
Good evening, everybody. So this is the time of year, we always have the 3 ESC contracts on here. You're pretty familiar with them. If you look at them this year, you'll see teaching and learning, student services, special ed, some attendance, a little bit of everything through the three ESCs. We're not immune to the rising costs, so you'll see that too. One of the things that does stand out this year, and it's just because of students' age, we have more students this year probably attending some of the transition programs where they graduate academically, but they stay with us for some type of transition program. And that's mainly through Warren County ESC and Hamilton County ESC. So we've got a little record number there. So that's why you'll see some of those programs have a little bit higher numbers. We did just have one graduate this year, so that was a fun graduation to go to last week. Some years I have 0 and some years I have 10. So it depends on their age, right? But if you have any questions about the contracts, I can take them.
I was just gonna ask one. So do the ESC set this rate where you see rate used, or is that like a state, like industry standard, or that's just? Okay,
ESC set them. They're all different. And I would say mainly standard. If you talk to all the ESCs, they would probably be pretty close in line. Like all OTs, all PTs, things like that, psychs, yeah.
okay. Thank
Mrs.
you.
Martin, the contracts are for the students that we currently have, correct?
Correct.
So if a student would move in that needs services,
Not on here, so that would be added during the year. And that happens the moment these are approved. Yes, maybe like tomorrow, a new student moves in. Yes, all summer long.
thank you.
And could you just explain a little bit about so we've got the Hamilton County, Butler County, Warren County. What dictates what services we use?
Question. Sometimes it dictates who provides what. So Warren County and Butler County don't compete in a few areas. So one of them says, we'll do this part of audiology, we'll do this part of audiology. And then we go to each one of them. There's no competing. Sometimes it's a rates. If like we decide they offer the better rates around hearing interpreters, we go that route. Sometimes it's a program. They don't usually all have the same program for transition programming. So when our parents, probably about sophomore, junior, definitely senior year, as our parents attend some of the open houses, we work with them, some of the different programs, they all don't offer the same one. So we might have different ones on there. Some of them do attendance and we just use it because it's Warren County. So everybody's a little bit different. That answer it?
It does,
Yeah,
it
okay.
does. And it's great we have access to some different options. So I
Very
appreciate
much.
you explaining that.
Any further questions? Well, with that, may I have a motion to approve these items?
I will make that motion.
I'll second the motion. Mr. Morrow?
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfron,
Yes.
Mr. Skirl,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes,
Next on the agenda are the items presented by the board. Mrs. Phillips, did you have?
I have one. Yes, indeed. Since we have had a spell of a few months without any public participation, I would think next month would be a great time in July to possibly pull that policy out and go through it and make sure that what we have in there is what we're following, or any changes that we need to make, or anything that needs to be added.
I like that idea.
That's a great idea.
All right. Do we have anything else to add other than to say commencement was great? You all did a great job. Shout out Mr. Cordini. Always a wonderful time. So, and to the staff, just another great year. We appreciate all your hard work, and yeah, it'll be August before we all know it. So with that, did we have any? I'm looking at all of you. Do we have anything else for items presented?
I do not.
All right, so next on the agenda is the legislative update, Mr. Skirl.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to report. There's nothing that was sent to Governor DeWine or signed by him this month. But there was one item, Senate Bill 83, which would enact the Ohio Higher Education Enhancement Act. That did pass, so that is now moved on to the House for their review and approval. I have included some activity that's gone on over the past few weeks since we last met. So if you read through those, have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Skrull. Next on the agenda is the Student Achievement Liaison Update. Mrs. Phillips?
Since school is not in session, I hope they're enjoying the summer with their families and will be ready to get back into the groove in August.
Sounds good. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting?
I will make that motion.
I'll second the motion. Mr. Morrow?
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfron,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.